Okay, hello. This is a continuation of my summary on how the United States is starting a new Cold War with Russia. And today's focus is we're going to examine how a ton of money, I mean, mountains of money, will be made off of a new Cold War with Russia. All right. So, kind of a heading for this is wars have always been fought for resources, wealth, money, and power. However, how this is done has evolved over time. All right. And again, the purpose of this section is to show how massive amounts of money will be made off of a new Cold War with Russia, especially with $1 trillion already earmarked for nuclear revamp slash arms race, because it's going to fuel an arms race. And money, big amounts of money, is a purpose for the United States starting this new war. We'll begin with an overview of the evolution of the economics of warfare to show you that war has always been about money and wealth and power. Then we'll review how the U.S. is starting this new Cold War. Bottom lines is, wars are fought for wealth, and the USA undeniably starts many wars. All right? There's no debate here. There's no, that's not the way I see it. There's no, I believe what I want to. This is simple, undeniable, absolutely proven historical fact. All you got to do is Google list of wars of the United States. That's all you got to do. You'll find many sources, and they'll just list all the wars. And then what you do is you make a chronological chart like this. You list out all the wars and when they're fought, and you'll see. Here's a Revolutionary War. You'll see USA is almost constantly at war, fighting many wars at the same time. Here we're fighting 7, 6, 7, 6, 5, 5, 8 wars at the same time. 8 wars again. All fought at the same time. So there's no denying this. The only way you can deny this is remain totally ignorant. All right. So here's my evolution of the economics of war. And as a subheading, it's controlling the flow of collective resources. Because in order to fight these wars, you have to control the flow of collective resources. All right? That's when you get big amounts of money that you can have big military operations. So economics is both a motive for war. That's why you fight wars. For the economics, for the wealth, for the resources, as well as the means of fighting wars. So it provides the resources and money that you need to fight wars. So you fight it for economics, but it also makes wars possible. Now, before I go on, I want to make a distinction between means of war and modes. By means, again, we're talking about the economics of warfare, all right? And by mode, I'm talking more about something along the lines of, there was a book written by Michael Howard called War in European History, and it goes through the evolution of war in different modes. He covers wars of knights, wars of mercenaries, wars of merchants, wars of professionals, wars of revolutions. This is, French Revolution time and thereafter. Wars of nations. Right on the heels of the French Revolution, nations really started popping up. Mechanized war, something I added, and proxy wars and cyber war, of course, today. All right. Now, in this analysis, I'm going to cover 4 eras or 4 stages: classic empire building, mercantilism, colonialism, and modern industrial machine production warfare, and modern financing. All right. Now, you'll see in each of them you have a very similar pattern here. The blue section is the economics. The green section here is tapping profits, controlling collective resources, and then using that to build your military forces. All right, so the pink here is military forces, and each of them you'll see is the same pattern, because it is the same pattern. The same applies in all four cases. So the evolution of war for profit and power, changing economics of warfare. Again, this section is the economics. So from the economics, you tap profits off of collective resources. You create and control wealth. And with that wealth, you make your weapons and build your military forces, both on land and on sea. And then with that, you use that to conquer territory and control resources. That's the purpose of conquering territory, right? You don't just conquer territory for the sake of territory. It's to control resources. And the resources are either material or human. Of the two, I believe human is far more important. Now, material is going to be in land and whatever you get from the land, whether it's agriculture or minerals or timber or whatever. Especially non-perishable goods, because non-perishable goods are portable. And then you can collect taxes, you collect tribute, booty, and those are the things you use to tap profits. All right. As far as human resource, the main focus is you want to increase productivity, and to do that, you want to create incentives and harness self-interest, right? Because self-interest is the best resource. Why? Because this is the fundamental nature of man. Self-serving, self-interested, self-promoting, self-benefiting, right? That's why people do things. And this is the essence of capitalism. Harnessing and utilizing self-interest, right? Which is why communism failed. Because it wasn't about the self, it was about the collective, right? And people are not going to sacrifice for the collective. They'll sacrifice and work hard and they benefit from it themselves. Anyways, so also you want to nurture markets, which means you want to establish and promote markets. And this increases the volume of transactions, which is essentially your economy. The more transactions means the more production you got. More production and consumption, right? Which is your economy. You improve livelihoods this way, and you want to establish law and order because that allows for peace and prosperity, right? Which is essentially the same as Pax Romana. And that's why the Roman Empire lasted for so long. It's because it provided this peace and prosperity. So it provided a beneficial function. It was functional. And thereby it gained legitimacy and support. Without that support, the Roman Empire could not have lasted so long. It had been broken up with internal uprisings and conflict and revolts. Then you want to build transportation infrastructure and secure the trade routes. You also want to secure the borders or boundaries of your empire. And you want to suppress internal uprisings and infighting. You want to try to do that by integrating cultures. All right. If you can't, that reduces in-group versus out-group identification. So a key factor in identifying other people as within your group is to have cultural similarity. All right. It's that simple. And I say here that control through military threat alone backfires because it fuels insurgency. It always fuels insurgency. It pisses people off. You got to control things through military threat. You're just going to make problems for yourself. You're going to make that opposition. Key idea. You want to promote and grow the production capacity within your empire, right? Because it is the goose that lays the golden egg. It is the gift that keeps on giving, right? It keeps producing year after year. You want to tap that. Plunder fails because it is a one-time game. You go in, conquer territory, you plunder, you destroy production capacity, right? So you get a short slug of wealth, but that's it. You kill the goose that lays the golden eggs year after year. All right. So from this, you tap profits. And again, the best way to control is not through military force. It's through legitimacy. It's through self-interest. It's through cultural identification. Things like that. I mean, there's more, right? But again, if it's just military threat alone of an occupation, you're going to get an insurgency. Then you're going to get continuous, persistent, perpetual problems. All right, so the next stage is mercantilism, and it really blends in with classic empire building because a lot of empires also used mercantilism. All right, so there's no clear distinction between the two necessarily. All right, and so again, this is your economics, and from your economics, you capture profits and you create wealth. All right, you use that to build your weapons and military forces on land and on sea. And you conquer and control trade routes, both on land and sea. Right? Key thing is to control trade hubs. This could be an inland city at crossroads between population centers, or it could be strategic choke points. You want to control that. I mentioned the UK because Great Britain perhaps knew best the importance of strategic choke points. I'll show you that. You want to control ports, mouths of rivers, right? And the reason why that's important is because that gives you indirect control of the entire economies of inland interior areas. I'll give you examples of control of the mouth of the river Scheldt and Charleston Harbor. We'll talk about that as examples. Then you want to, once you control all this, you want to conduct arbitrage. Hold on, there's some toxic mold in the air. Starting. All right, I'm back. It's not really, it got a little better. Okay. So yeah, conduct arbitrage. And arbitrage is basically, it's the idea you buy cheap, you sell high. You buy low, you sell high. Right? So you purchase commodities in one market where the price is low, you ship it to another market. It could be way across the world, right? And in the other market, the price is high. High demand, low supply, you're gonna get high price. And you do this continually and you make vast profits. Right? Examples are Silk Road trade, spice routes. All right. So I want to show you this real quick. Here are some Silk Road routes, right? Running through Eurasia, running through the Middle East, right? Then on to Europe here. Going through the Levant area here. And then you got the spice trade routes, right? Those are spice islands. All right, trade going all the way up to China over here. All right, all along India and Arabian Sea, either through the Straits of Hormuz and Persian Gulf, or through the Gulf of Aden and then up the Red Sea here, right? And on its way to Europe, right? Okay, so this was a very dominant trade that lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Let's see. Perhaps even over 1,000 years. Okay, now next thing I want to show you is the idea of strategic choke points and how Great Britain dominated. So I got a map of the world and I listed all the strategic choke points that Great Britain controlled, and they basically zeroed in on all of them, right? So I'll cover them one at a time here. The first strategic choke point covered the Scandinavian area through trading with Europe, and any trade going through, the spice trades that came from here with Portugal, all right, and it was a Greenland, Iceland, UK gap right here. plus the English Channel right here. Great Britain dominated that. And then they dominated Gibraltar, all right, which is the gateway between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. Spain would dominate it, if not for the fact that Britain controlled Gibraltar, right on the southern point there of Spain, right? D. D is the Cape of Good Hope on Africa, and Britain dominated that. E is the Gulf of Aden and Perim. F is the Suez Canal. I mean, you could throw in there Malta over here, which is important in controlling east-west traffic through the Mediterranean. G is Bosphorus Dardanelles. Britain tried to control that with their Gallipoli attempt, okay, during World War One. Right? They controlled the Straits of Hormuz, right there, at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. And then the tip of India is similar to the Cape of Good Hope here, coming across there. J is the Malacca Straits, and it was controlled by Singapore, right there on the southern tip of the Malaysian Peninsula. All right, basically Singapore was like Gibraltar. All right, what Gibraltar was for the Mediterranean and Atlantic traffic, Singapore was the same for the Pacific and Indian Ocean traffic. It was the gateway there, the choke point. And then they took Weiwei on the Shantung Peninsula, tip of the Shantung Peninsula. All right. Now I'll give you a couple. Oh, also the Falklands here. Falklands is the control Cape Horn on the southern axis around South America. All right. Now a couple other examples in the United States, or actually in the northern North America, is Britain took Quebec in the French Indian War, all right, to control the mouth of the St. Lawrence waterway, right? They also tried to take New Orleans to control the mouth of the Mississippi River and all the inland economics. All the goods that are produced here are only of value if you can get them to market. And back then, the best way was water transportation. Send it down a river, okay? And to control that, all you had to do is control the mouth of the river. If you control the mouth of the river, you control all the inland economics, at least indirectly, right? One example is the mouth of the river Scheldt, which is in Belgium, and that's the mouth of the river that leads to Antwerp. All right. And an example is the 30 Years' War. In the Peace of Westphalia, at the end of the 30 Years' War, the Dutch obtained control of the mouth of the river Scheldt. And what that did, Antwerp had, prior to that, had been the commercial center of Europe at that point. Right? That killed Antwerp, and that shifted the power to Amsterdam. Right? And the Dutch gained control over, water trade. And Dutch became a great empire before they were conquered by Britain. Okay? So another example of controlling a port that's related to U.S. history is Charleston Harbor. All right? Control of Charleston Harbor in South Carolina was a part of the 1832, what was that called? The constitutional crisis, or, when South Carolina basically was not going to pay federal tariff tax, all right? Almost led to a civil war back then. The same thing happened again that started the Civil War, all right? The crisis in Charleston Harbor with Fort Sumter, right? You do not have to, if South Carolina is causing problems, you do not have to conquer all South Carolina. All you got to do is control one port, Charleston, and you shut down the whole damn economy. You kill South Carolina, right? So, those are some examples. right? Strategic choke points, ports, river mouths, right? Why they're important. So again, this is how you make money: arbitrage, vast profits, right? Usually through some nationally supported company. British East India Company, Dutch East India Company, French East India Company, whatever. And then they had the West Indies companies too. Okay, that idea. All right, so now colonialism was a development and advancement of mercantilism, right? But again, you have your economics here, right? This is your economics, and from that, you capture profits, create wealth. With that profits, wealth, you build your military forces. You make your weapons, you build your military forces on land and sea. Then you use that to capture a trading port, right? You also have to control shipping lines as well. This has not gone out. This continues. But instead, you expand by conquering inland territory. Here you're limited to ports and river mouths, all right? Usually one and the same. Now you're going inland, conquering inland territory to control resource production, which is a form of upstream integration. All right, and then you get direct control of supply. You better control price and volume, and thereby you increase your profits. Plus, you better feed your home industries with raw materials. You better ensure that your home industries have sufficient raw materials. And this is where you make your real money, in manufactured goods, because you make far more profit with value added when you make a finished product than a raw material. Then you want to build interior transportation in your colony, right, in your foreign territory that you control. You want to build train lines. You want to have steamboats going up rivers, right? And you also want to establish and control the currency, usually using your own currency, British pounds, guineas, whatever, right? And you use that to collect taxes. That's an important thing. You establish taxes over there. That's one of the ways you capture profits. Not the only way, right? It's one of the ways. And then you use taxes to leverage labor. So because people have to pay taxes in that currency, they gotta work. They don't work, they don't pay their taxes, they go to jail. Right? So this is leverage. Taxes turn out to be leverage, but it's based upon currency. These all go hand in hand. Currency, tax, control labor. And then once you do that, you develop manufacturing, you develop some industries there. Why? Because overseas labor costs are far cheaper, all right? Usually third world countries use child labor, whatever they did, right? And then you control the import and distribution markets. If you control the import and distribution markets, you dump all your excess manufactured goods. So all the stuff made in your home industries, you sell here. Excess stuff you sell here. You're making more money, right? But what it does is it kills the local industries and economy, right? But they don't care about that. You secure trade routes. You build and control urban infrastructure, all right? Things like trains, trolleys, roads, electricity, water, sewage, communications, whether it's telegraph or telephones or later radio, whatever. And you control banks with control of currency, right? Plus you make profit off of interest here. And with this, you maximize extraction of wealth out of that country. So you're extracting wealth in all areas. Resources, currency, taxes, you control the labor, you develop manufacturing, You control their import and distribution markets. You develop and control their infrastructure, and you make profits off of all these. These are daily money makers, like cha-ching, 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 bringing up cash every damn day. All right, and you maximize the extraction of wealth out of that country. But what that does is that leaves massive poverty and underdevelopment and dependency. They're solely dependent upon the single industry, the single resource that's being extracted out of there, which reduces labor costs. It reduces wages. So that adds to the poverty. All right. Now there's underdevelopment because there's no money in the local markets for businesses to develop. All right. It's constantly underdeveloped. So this maximized wealth extraction for the Western country, the first world country, but it kills the third world country. And that is an element of Leninist communism. So all this fueled Leninist communists and made sense, right? I mean, it's just simple logic, right? Lenin wasn't a freaking genius. It was like, duh, right? So these guys said, yeah, we're being screwed. So it fueled communism, right? Which is a bad idea. And then, so colonialism led to the wars of colonial independence, all right? And really, to put this into perspective, wars of colonial independence or decolonization, that was the hot part of the first Cold War. So the first Cold War was largely cold between, the major superpowers, USA and the Soviet Union, right? But there were a lot of hot conflicts all around it. And the vast majority of hot conflicts were in these third world nations, including places like Vietnam, but everywhere throughout Africa, for example, right? Or different places in Asia, or even in the Middle East, right? And even in Latin America, where there's, U.S. Communist conflict, right? So this was the real nature of the hot part of the first Cold War, right? The real conflict. Now, colonialism, in another aspect, was a key factor in World War I and World War II, right? It was that colonial competition that was a driving force behind these wars. Not the only force, but it was certainly a key force, right? And the reason why is this was the economics. This was the means of creating wealth. And from wealth, you get what? You get military power. All right? So, it was a time when the Industrial Revolution was setting in. Home industries were becoming important. All right? But it required sources of raw materials and markets to absorb excess manufactured goods, right? As production increased, efficiency increased, as price fell, right? You need to sell more stuff. All right. So that was a big factor that led into World War I. And of course, World War II was basically a continuation of the unfinished business of World War I to a large extent. All right, so now the last phase is modern industrial era, in which machine production was a big factor because it vastly increased the volume of production, right? And in combination with this, I say modern financing. You'll see how that comes into play here, right? So once again, this is your economics, and it is far more complex and involved here, all right? As things have become more sophisticated and people have conceived of and recognized different means of making money, all right? But again, you capture profits, you create your wealth. With that, you build your military weapons and military forces. But now you got machine mass production of weapons, right? And this really started in the United States in the 1830s with the effort to get interchangeability of weapons parts. All right, and it resulted in the creation of what's called the American system of machine manufacturing of weapons instead of handcrafted weapons, which was the way weapons were made up until then. Whether it's a cannon, whether it's a musket, whether it's a sword, whatever, all handcrafted. Okay, now it's machine crafted. Greatly increased the volume of weapons production and munitions, which greatly increased profits. Plus, on top of that, you had advancing technology for weapons, eventually leading to high-tech weapons, right? Now, high-tech weapons vastly increase profits itself. It vastly increases unit value. So you got vastly increased unit value multiplied by vastly increased volume that greatly increases profit potential from weapons. And that results in the military industrial complex, where vast money is made off of weapons production itself. So here, the weapons were more a means to making money. Now the weapons here were the chief means of making money. So with machine mass production, weapons manufacturing itself became a primary means of profit and economic stimulus. All right, private profit for the arms producers, people who have great control in the stocks of arms industry and of military corporations like logistics corporations and private military security contractor corporations, right? Or companies that monopolize reconstruction contracts. We'll talk about this in a second. All right. All right. Also, it's an economic stimulus for the economy in general through Keynesian economics, right? Remember Keynesian, George Maynard Keynes talked about underutilized production capacity, use of fiscal policy, demand-side economics. Pump priming are often terms used to, I guess, metaphorically describe Keynesian economics. And the key idea is to increase the velocity of money, right? Because your GDP, in simple terms, is your overall supply money times the velocity of money. If you increase the velocity, you grow your economy. You stimulate this. And keep in mind that for the United States, every damn year, year after year, around but slightly above 50% of the federal budget, over half of the money spent by the government, is spent on defense industry. That's not including homeland security, right? Plus, you got to take into account the multiplier effect. So it has an even bigger effect upon the economy. For example, if the federal budget for military defense spending is 4% of our economy, well, you multiply that by a factor of 3 or 4, and you take away that 4%, you crumble the weight up to 12, up to 16% of the economy, right? So it's an important factor. Now, the military-industrial, this results in the military-industrial complex and big government contracts, right? Both of which are a form of what I call hydrological engineering, which is controlling collective resources. Remember, each of these, the key to each of these is you create a way of controlling collective resources. You harness, right, the resources being produced by an entire empire, right? And you control it. You tap profits up. Well, this is just a continuation in a different way through the military-industrial complex. It's steering the flow of collective resources and revenues to tap profits. Examples, I give a couple examples here. KBR, Halliburton, Carlyle Group. All right. We'll talk about them when we get down to here. All right. So one aspect of warfare that's different from commodities other typical commodities is in war or conflict that creates a quantum jump in consumption demand for weapons and munitions. All right, so I'll show you what I mean by that. So here is a graph that has demand going from 0 on up and time going along as time progresses. All right, now we'll start off by looking at the demand for typical commodities. All right, let's say it's a house or a car, refrigerator, washing machines, entertainment systems, or any other big ticket items which you might finance, for example, right? And demand's going to fluctuate. It's going to go up and down, right? It may have a steady trend going up as population grows or whatever, right? But it's going to go up and down. And I just drew a random chart here, right? Just made this up, right? But it's not fluctuating all that much, as you can see. Factors that can affect this are interest rates, market conditions, that affect price of whatever commodity it is, state of the economy, right, and consumer confidence. These go hand in hand. The economy's good. Consumer confidence usually follows, but not all the time, right? And that affects purchasing, which affects demand. Okay. Now for weapons, I drew that in red here. And during peacetime, you always have some amount of consumption with practice using weapons, firing off practice rounds. All right. But if you have a start of a war, including a Cold War, which has an arms race, which causes a greatly increased rate of research and development and accelerated weapons replacement, which is essentially consumption, which increases demand for new weapons, right? You're replacing the old weapons. So whether you're firing them off in a hot war, or you have an arms race in a Cold War, either way, you have heightened demand for weapons, right? So wars create great control over weapons consumption. You can't control this very well. It's hard with interest rates, market conditions, right? You try to encourage consumption. With war, you got great control. You go from here to bam, way up here. If you can start a war, you got great control over weapons consumption. Now that should be obvious. Any idiot should be able to see that. Right? All right. So it's not only it's high consumption rates, and it's high because why? Wars are maximum effort things normally, right? I mean, you could get, depends on the type of war. If it's a proxy war, if it's a low intensity war, well, it's not that. But if you're involved in a hot war directly, right? And if it's a do or die, your nation's going to go under if you lose. Well, you got maximum consumption rate here. It's maximum effort, maximum consumption rate. All right. So it's high demand for super high priced commodities. Weapons are very high priced, often because they're not a competitive market. Right. All right. So here's wartime consumption of weapons and munitions, and the key factor is whether you're at war or peace. Here's peace. Here's war. All right. So that's in the modern industrial era. It's huge. All right. Conflict war can be used to create debt, and that debt can be used to leverage and control production of commodities. Okay. So what I want to say is, let's say you create a war in an area that produces oil, right? So the nation, it's an oil-producing nation, and they're fighting a war. And usually in these oil-producing nations, like in the Middle East, they do not have sophisticated technology and sophisticated industries to make their own weapons. So they got to purchase them, right? Now, how do they purchase them? Right? They got to sell oil. That's their chief source of revenue. Right? So if you can start a war over there, right? They can pay for it by initially financing it with debt, but they eventually got to pay off that debt. And they paid off by selling oil. Now, if they sell more oil, it increases the supply of oil in the market and it lowers price. So if you can control war in an oil-producing country, like a Middle East country, you can indirectly control oil price through that war. And it works. Price will come down. Proven in the Rock-Around War. Proven in every damn war in the Middle East. Between oil-producing countries. Okay. Alright, so I say conflict and war can be used to create debt, and that debt is used to leverage and control production of a commodity. Oil, diamonds, it can be gold, it can be cobalt, like in Africa. And then you gain control of supply, and thus price, at least indirectly. I give you an example of the Middle East, right? The USA has created tons of conflict in the Middle East, right? Does the average American know that? Hell no. They think we just do good, right? That's what they assume. They don't know squat jack. Their perceptions are based on nothing. And I give example of new wars. This is a term used for wars in third world countries between warlords. Usually they're fighting over resources, whatever it is. Like it could be diamonds, like in Syrian Leone, or I don't know, the other, whatever nations produce diamonds over there. Or gold, or cobalt, right? So let me give you an example of how Western nations can be involved, at least private corporations. So here's an example of a British private military security corporation called Aegis Corporation, of which Mark Thatcher, son of Margaret Thatcher, is one of the chief board members of this, or he's a chief member of this corporation. Not sure what his role is, right? Gotta look that up again. But anyways, Aegis Corporation was involved in 2 coups. A coup in Zimbabwe. They orchestrated a coup here in Zimbabwe in exchange for oil concessions. All right? They got control of Zimbabwe oil by orchestrating a coup. And then what you do is you don't settle things. You keep fueling the conflict between warlords. All right? They're fighting. They need more weapons. You supply the weapons. How do they supply the weapons? They got to sell more of the resource, which is oil or diamonds. Right? Aegis Corporation was hired to orchestrate a coup in Sierra Leone in exchange for concessions on mining rights. Mining of what? Diamonds. Right? So, I mean, this is British stuff. This is classic British stuff. People think of Britain as being all good guys and civilized. Man, this is what they've been doing for centuries. This is neo-colonial stuff, but they've been doing colonial crap. Right? This is essentially neo-colonialism. Same old neo-colonial pattern. Right? So I use example of Blood Diamond because, it wasn't a bad movie. There's a couple of decent movies like this where it's actually intelligent, which is few and far between for Hollywood. I'm not saying they don't make some intelligent stuff, but mostly it's stupid crap, a lot of propaganda crap. But this was a decent movie because it kind of showed how private mercenary corporations were involved in the wars over there and how they're profiting off of it, right? It kind of roughly showed it. Another good movie is The International, which showed the impact of debt, right? Related to this same type of thing also, the new wars, which are small arms conflict, fought largely with, AK-47s and RPGs and whatnot, right? They're fought within failed states. The governments broke down. You got warlords in charge of different groups. There's constant warfare. You also have child soldiers, right? You have no civil society that breaks down production capacity. All right, the warlords dominate, and they fight for control of the chief resource in that area, whether it's oil or it's diamonds, right, to finance the war. And then Western corporations, like these private military security corporations, feed the war with arms and ammunition, and that fuels the war, which in the end ultimately facilitates the extraction of that resource. As the war goes on, as they got to replace weapons and ammunition, they got to produce more of that resource, right? So those are the new wars, and it's very similar to what we do in the Middle East. It's the same thing, right? The same game, same mechanism, right? Conflict is beneficial. Conflict war can be created to control the flow of collective revenues, steering the stream towards yourself. And I'll give you an example of the Iraq invasion war. All right. Now, one corporation controlled every damn logistical contract. That was Halliburton, a Bush company. Bush and all bonesmen. Why? Halliburton's owned by Dresser Industries. Dresser Industries owned by Brown Brothers Harriman Banking. Right? Who's all that? That's Bush and all bonesmen buddies. Harriman. All the bonesmen buddies. They're all partners in Brown Brothers Harriman. Private military security contractors. You think of Blackwater, but KBR was big. Right? Reconstruction contracts. Let me give you an example. After the first Gulf War, after Kuwait was all busted up, right? Well, during the war, during the air war, during the ground war, right? A lot of U.S. companies were just watering at the mouth, thinking, man, this is going to be lucrative. All the contracts for Kuwait, to rebuild Kuwait, right? And they're trying to get a piece of this. But no one got squat. Only three companies dominated the reconstruction of Kuwait. Halliburton, KBR, and Bechtel. All three power elite controlled companies. They dominated the whole damn thing. They monopolized the whole damn thing. So they monopolized war. They steer the flow of collective resources towards them. Right? And war is a big way of doing it. Conflict war can be used as a means of flipping client states. Like Iraq. Who was Iraq a client of? Soviet Union and Russia. Prior to we going in there. As soon as we go in, who are they a client of? USA. Who are they buying the weapons from now? Mostly USA. Although, I admit, they recently were disenchanted with the M1 Abrams, and they purchased some Russian T90s because they're a lot cheaper. Right? Figured, well, you know what? M1 Abrams isn't doing it for us any better than this T90. Right? A lot cheaper weapon, but it's mostly in M1 Abrams has better systems. I'm not going to get into that now. All right. So you increase weapon sales when you flip the client state. What is Iraq buying from us now? Every damn thing, from small arms, squad automatic weapons to M16s to Humvees to MRAPs, the mine-resistant vehicles, to M1 Abrams, to trucks, to F-16 aircraft, to AH-64 Apache helicopters. They buy American now. Plus, we get control of resource, right? Now, during the occupation, for a while, the Coalition Provisional Authority directly controlled Iraqi oil. Now it's through who gets the contracts? U.S. corporations, right? to rebuild and control their oil and gas. All right. And also, in addition to that, you increase threat to adversaries, to induce a reaction, to create conflict, Cold War. One example is Russia. Now, if you look at the Middle East, right, Russia, Soviet Union, used to have dominant control of client states, 8-6. They had 8 client states in the Middle East, and the U.S. and the West only had 6. Now it's all been flipped. Russia only has 1 remaining client state. All the rest, except for special cases like Syria, Libya, and Iran, all the rest have been flipped to the United States. Russia only has Syria, and not even all of Syria. Only about half of Syria, because Syria's all busted up now. It's the sole remaining client state in the Middle East. And then in 2015, when Russia intervened, right, they're portrayed as a big, bad, evil expansionist doing dirty things in the Middle East. What the hell do you think we're doing? We invade a whole damn country, tear it all up, and no one blinks at that in the United States. Oh, that's okay. We did it for good reasons. What good reasons? No weapons of mass destruction. No connection to Al-Qaeda. We only created trouble there. Destabilized the Middle East. Blew up sectarian conflict. Blew up civil war in their country. Expanded the Shia-Sunni conflict throughout the entire region. Greatly expanded the terrorist threat. All right. So now conflict can be used to enforce currency use. Let me give you an example. In October 2000, Saddam Hussein abandoned the petrodollar for the euro. He's going to only accept euros for oil. All right? We invade Iraq. What's one of the first things we do? We put him back on the petrodollar. Right? Not only do we sell the weapon, we got him back in the petrodollar. Bam, right away. Muammar Gaddafi was trying to shift from the petrodollar and from the French franc, which dominates West Africa. All right? That's the currency of West Africa. So he wants to abandon both the petrodollar and the French franc and replace that with an Arab-based, gold-backed dinar. Dinar is an Arab currency, right? He gets whacked. He gets kicked out, right? Who led the charge? Well, U.S., but it was primarily the French, right? What's French skin in the game? The French franc, right? So with the petrodollar, that helps you maintain currency values. This is a big source of demand, right? Probably no bigger daily consumption of a resource every damn day than oil, right? That drives world economies. With that high demand, you can maintain currency value even with increasing supply, thus avoiding inflation, which comes back and bites your economy in the ass, right? Plus, you get all the seigniorage for making more money. All right. So you can make a lot more money. You make money from making. How's money made these days? Electronically. It's cheap, right? And then, you're going to get cryptocurrency, even cheaper. All right. Conflict war can be used to improve the balance of trade. All right. This is huge, especially when you get high oil prices. It's recycling a currency, right? Which is a huge benefit to the economy. It sustains trade. It keeps interest rates down. All right. It increases weapon sales, right? They purchase your weapons, and let me give you an example historically from the Shah of Iran. I showed you this before. This is Iran's weapon imports, all right? Total client to the United States, all right? Here's 53. This is the coup. This is when we put the Shah in power here, all right? They're not buying many weapons, right? Buying some more. Shah starting to build up his military forces. But here is 1970, so 73 is right around here, right? This is the OPEC Oil Embargo, right? Oil prices went through the roof. They quadrupled from like $4 or $5 a barrel to 4 times higher, right? Oil prices jumped radically, right? That meant you have a great outflow of currency to buy the oil, a lot of dollars flowing out. Now, you got an imbalance of trade. You cannot keep sustaining trade because if you have an imbalance, it's going to whack currency values in 2 different markets now. The home market and the foreign oil-producing country market, right? And trade's going to break down, which means you're not going to get oil. So to balance that, right, plus it's killing currency values at home, right? There's a currency shortage at home, killing interest rates. So to balance that, right, you got to recycle currency. You do that by selling weapons. Look at the weapons trade to Iran. Bam! Went up until right before the revolution. Then it drops to nothing, right? Iranian Revolution in 79. So that's an important part of war in Middle East countries. Who you buy a lot of oil from. You balance trade. Conflict war can be used to influence elections, control politics. I'll give you a couple examples, right? Gulf of Tonkin. This whole incident was planned and set up by the LBJ administration. I showed you that. I showed you how George Bundy, a bonesman, mentored by Robert Lovett, right, was a key architect of the war, writing the 30-day plan. All right, now I know you don't remember squat, but the LBJ manufactured the Gulf of Tonkin incident, used that to get us into the war. He ran on a peace ticket. All right, I'll keep you out of the war as they're manufacturing the war, and his handling of it was seen as brilliant. It's going to keep us safe. When he manufactured that incident, and he won by a landslide. Another example is a Karl Rove strategist, right? Chief Republican strategist. Said how you got to maintain the fear of terrorism, right? And pump up the Iraq War resolution. It'll give you the Iraq War resolution, plus it'll give you the Republican victory in the 2002 November election. And it worked, right? Republicans stole both the House and the Senate from the Democrats. It worked. Plus, they got the Iraq War resolution, right? Which is a euphemistic declaration of war. And this became the sole basis for the long-ass war in Iraq, right? This was manufactured and manipulated. I taught you that. That's how these wars work. Okay. So I explained the evolution of the economics of warfare. Now, Russia is being portrayed by U.S. politicians and the U.S. media as a big, bad boogeyman, as a scary threat due to their actions. But they never show what the USA did to provoke those actions, which are always kept out of the public mind, right? That's how people can believe whatever they want to believe. They keep crap out of their minds. Oh, I don't see it that way. Well, there's nothing in your mind to show you that way. The USA jams Russia with an attack, threat, or provocation, and when Russia reacts defensively, we point the finger and accuse them of aggression and rapacious expansionism. When they really are scrambling defensively, we never show what we did to instigate the whole thing. So I want to review the list of how the USA is instigating a new Cold War with attacks and threats upon Russia intended to provoke a reaction which is then portrayed as naked aggression. Now, self-serving liars, knowing nothing, or at least plugging their ears with their fingers, closing their eyes, and screaming, "La la 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 la, I can't hear you," right? Now, if you can do that, you can deny this list outright, right? And they'll deny it outright because, one, it is a long list, and they'll say, "Unbelievable, that list be too long. I can't believe it." And two, they don't remember a single fact or intelligent analysis I taught about each and every one. So with nothing in their minds, they can believe whatever they want. That's how it works, right? It's totally self-serving. And that's the nature of man, to be self-serving. So in this table, I have what incident was Russia initiating or were they reacting? Was Russia being offensive or defensive? Was the USA instigating and initiating things? Right? All right. So the first one is Russian abrogation of the INF Treaty. Oh, Russia's fueling an arms race because they're deploying new intermediate range missiles in the European theater. Right? Well, why did they do that? They said over and over and over again, hey, don't install those anti-ballistic missiles because it's going to disrupt the balance of arms, nuclear arms in Europe, and we're going to have to do this, right? They warned us so many damn times. We instigated by jamming Russia with a bogus ABM treaty abrogation that disrupted the nuclear balance. We drove this. So they deployed intermediate range nuclear missiles. So then we say, oh, we got to develop and deploy our own. Escalating arms race. They develop hypersonic missiles to evade ABMs. So we're like, oh, we got to develop and deploy our own ABMs or hypersonic missiles. And we got to develop systems to defend against hypersonic missiles. Right? Fueling the arms race. More money for the military-industrial complex. Ongoing pipeline. Right? Man, this is we just blew this sucker up. Come on. Right? We tried to block construction. When we could block the construction, we blew the sucker up by planting malware in their control systems. All right. 2008, Russian invasion of Georgia. Oh, they're evil. They're expansionists. They're a threat to Europe. Now they're reacting. They're being defensive. USA instigated with a threat of NATO expansion to Ukraine and Georgia when Ukraine was screwing Russia on Russian gas sales to Europe. Right? The gas transited across Ukraine. Well, they're stealing it. Right? They're not paying for it. They have big bills. They're violating contracts. And then Georgia was being developed as the alternative gas, the route for non-Russian gas to Europe. So this was a double whammy threat to Russia. We jammed them with this. At the NATO summit in April of 2008. And they reacted. 2014, Russian annexation of Crimea, right? Oh, they're evil. They're expansionists. They want to remake their glorious Russian Empire of old. That is no joke. That is exactly what politicians and even some military men, like Petraeus, said. He was a wannabe politician. All right? That's bullshit. Again, they're reacting defensively. How do you keep this out of people's minds? This is so damn obvious. So the USA supported the Euromaidan group, who then overthrew the Ukraine government, right, in a revolution and stole power, increasing the threat of with a pro-Western government. They want to join the European Union. They want to join NATO, right? Increasing the threat of NATO membership for Ukraine, right? Now, not only would that threaten Russia's gas sales to Europe, but it would also threaten Russia with the loss of all its military bases in Crimea, the most strategic point in the Black Sea, right? So we jammed them with a double threat again. Now, this revolution just happened. How do you keep that out of the public mind? Easy, right? People don't put two and two together. That's how perceptions are made, right? Oh, I don't see it that way. I don't know about no revolution. Shit. All right. 2015 Russian-Syrian intervention, right? So the Syrian Civil War started way back in 2011, right? And there was some U.S. involvement, although you can say it's, well, how much, it's hard to say, because you had U.S. NGOs, and this is a chief way of really overthrowing governments these days, through this type of method, right? U.S. NGOs supported the Arab Spring by training and directing leaders for the movement. I don't want to minimize this, but I'm going to say it's hard to say exactly how much the U.S. played a role, right? But I'm also saying that this is now, the chief means of overthrowing governments, right? You create protest movements. Now, Russia was trying to preserve its last remaining Middle East client state and only Mediterranean naval base. It was reacting. It was being defensive. They did intervene in 2015. Now, we intervene all the time. No one bats an eye at that. When we do it, it's like, oh, we're doing it for good reasons. Oh, bullshit. Right? When Russia does it, oh, they're evil. They're expansionists. They're a threat. They're trying to hang on to the last client state. Who's on the offensive here? USA. We flipped every damn client state. Except Syria. 2016, Russian interference in U.S. elections. This one, I say, can either be offensive or defensive. All these are defensive, right? It's offensive in support of Trump, but it was defensive due to Hillary's Russia-bashing rhetoric. She's coming on like a, hardcore Cold Warrior princess, right? Now, but the U.S., I'm not saying we initiated this, right? But we do the same to them. U.S. has non-government organizations inside Russia meddling with Russian politics, right? So we're doing the exact same to them, but the U.S. media and politicians never mention that. (2018) U.S. sanctions on Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We're just outright attacking Russia's gas for bullshit reasons. I explained the economics of this. It's bullshit. We're just jamming them with a threat. 2019 U.S. sanctions on Turk Stream 2 pipeline. Another pipeline we're attacking, right? U.S. is attacking Russia for bullshit reasons. 2020 Russian cyber hacks, right? And I say Russia is initiating and is offensive here, all right? But at the same time, you can say U.S. has been hacking Russia. We're doing the same thing to them since 1982 when we hacked their Orangor pipeline control systems. So we do the same to them, right? Now, I don't know a specific hacking operations, but I ran across a WikiLeaks document which chronicled our hacking operations all throughout the world. Right? It's not just one it's thousands of documents. We hack everywhere around the world. I'll be damned if we're not hacking Russia. We hack everywhere around the world. CIA hacks me. You're reading this now, you're listening to this now because the CIA hacks me. So, in my opinion, if the CIA are not hacking Russia to the max, they're not doing their job. You know they're doing their job. Even though I can't say I got proof of it. I don't have hard evidence that we're hacking Russia. But you know we're hacking Russia. All right, 2021, March and April, Russian military force built up near Ukraine. This just happened, right? This was portrayed by the Western media as dangerous Russian aggression. Russia's going to do something, right? But again, they reacted defensively. And it was the same scenario as 2008, right? Russian invasion of Georgia with the threat of NATO expansion to Ukraine and Georgia. Why? Once again, at the NATO summit, March 23rd and 24th, NATO membership for Ukraine and Georgia was once again pushed. While Blinken, Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of State, used the NATO stage on March 23rd, his speech to push U.S. sanctions on Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline for the stated purpose of forcing Russia to send gas back to Ukraine, who's been screwing Russia and threatening European energy security, right? So once again, this combines a threat of Ukraine screwing Russia's gas, protected by NATO. Ukraine protected by NATO, screwing Russia on gas. And then Georgia, the alternative route for non-Russian gas, also being protected by NATO. That's a double whammy threat to Russia. And then you have the 2021 Colonial gas pipeline. And everyone's saying, Russia's behind this, right? I wouldn't doubt it. Although Biden says, there's no evidence of Russian government involvement. Man, I wouldn't doubt that the Russian government's involved in this. So I say this, was it only a money-making scheme by this dark side ransomware group? Or was the Russian government involved? If so, were they reacting or was it payback? And if it was payback, was it also deterrence? Like, you don't screw with us again. Right? We got you back. Don't keep screwing our pipeline here, or we'll screw you. What came first, chicken or egg? Well, we're screwing them for no good reason here with their 2 pipelines. I don't see why they don't screw us. Turnaround's fair play. Payback's a bitch. What came first, chicken or egg? Who attacked who first? We attacked first, not Russia. Biden, no. Is that reported? Is that reported in the media? Hell no. Kept out of their mind, right? We do nothing. We're innocent. You see how perceptions are controlled? Just keep it out. All this is kept out of their mind. Nothing in their heads here. None of this in their heads. Oh, we did nothing. Russia's doing everything. Russia's the big bad boogeyman. You see how it works? It's pretty damn easy. Biden reports FBI has no evidence of Russian government involvement, but it won't surprise me since we blew up their Uyghur pipeline way back in '82, and currently we're whacking the Nord Stream 2 and Turk Stream 2 pipelines with sanctions. And from what I've read, Nord Stream 2 appears to be just about dead. Right? I'm sure Turk Stream 2 is having problems itself. I don't know. All right. So, the masses know none of this. Right? Now, Russia is not expanding. Russia is contracting. Russia's being pushed back and shoved back on all its corners. Russia's not trying to gain things. Russia's trying not to lose more and more. All right? I mean, it had Belarus, but even Belarus is being attacked by the U.S. Inroads are being made between the U.S. and Belarus. And Russia is not initiating. Russia is reacting, being jammed back on its heels, forced to react defensively. Nevertheless, Russia's defensive reactions are being portrayed as unprovoked, naked aggression and proof of their expansionist plans to conquer neighboring nations, to remake their glorious empire of old. I mean, this is total ridiculous crackpot bullshit, especially when these neighboring nations aren't worth squat. Why would you want to take them? They're not worth anything. You're just going to pay big time for that. It's total bullshit. But it fuels an arms race. It creates fear. And fear-mongering is the best way to get people to go to war. It's the best way to make your population compliant and docile and obedient and go along with the program. This then is being used to fuel a new Cold War and arms race. And gullible congressmen will sign off on big military appropriations bill. Just you watch. But it is a classic get you get game. Man, this game's played all the time. It works all the time. We jam Russia with threats and attacks, and when Russia reacts, we attack them. And when Russia reacts defensively, we point the finger and accuse them of aggression, while totally ignoring all that we did to instigate the whole thing. Maximum deniability. You deny everything or you just ignore it all. Keep it out of the public mind. If it's out of mind, it doesn't exist for them. Then it's totally Russia's fault. Russia is doing everything. It is a simple game played over and over since antiquity. Since people, a few smart people had brains. Right? That's how long it's been done. But it works every time because the masses never learn. They just don't learn. They fall for the same thing over and over. It's all about money in the end. Massive amounts of money in huge military appropriation bills and lucrative contracts approved by Congress that go to politically connected firms like Halliburton, Bush Bonesman owned. But it is a diversion of national resources which are better used by increasing U.S. production capacity, thus growing the U.S. economy, providing more opportunity to Americans, making us more prosperous, and helping us better compete on an international level, on international markets. But a new Cold War arms race will stuff mountains of money in the pockets of a few of the military-industrial complex / power elite, because the military-industrial complex is the power elite. And we'll examine the power elite diagram again. Down here, right? How they started wars of the 20th and 21st century. All right. Okay. Now, I'm not saying Putin is a good guy. Putin is no angel. Putin will do dirty, tricky things. He'll do sneaky. He does typical Putin stuff, right? But Putin is limited to what he can do because Russia is weak and vulnerable, both economically and militarily, right? Plus, Russia's not initiating. Russia's reacting. About all he can do against us are easy and cheap things, inexpensive things like cyber attacks and spreading false information. That's cheap and easy. You just get some hackers, hire some hackers, right? Who, they're going to make money off it anyways. Like the, that ransomware group. But to say the U.S. does no evil is a big, big lie. But that's what people want to believe. That's what why? Because they just want to beat their chest and scream USA, USA, and me feel good, me feel good, right? They don't want to deal with honesty, facts, intelligent analysis. They want to deal with what they want to believe because that's what makes them feel good. That is human nature. In fact, we are instigating and provoking this new Cold War, not Russia. And no American should be surprised at this, since historically, absolute historical proof, it can easily be argued that the USA is the biggest warmonger nation in recent history. Now, the average Americans are going to say, crazy! But what's that based upon? Nothing in their heads. Since the first day of our nation in April 19, 1775, the start of the Revolutionary War, which is our real Declaration of Independence, not July 4th, 1776, which was our official declaration. The real declaration when we started firing bullets. That's when we said we're independent. Since then, we have fought 675 war years in 244 years, right? 1775 to 2019 is when I did this, right? That means the USA has fought on average 2.77 wars every damn year of its existence. Now, is that peace-loving or is that warmongering? And there have only been 16 years in which the USA was not fighting a war. Out of 244 years, that means the USA is fighting 93.4% of the time. So almost 100% of the time, we're fighting a war. 93.4%. That's damn close to 100%. Is that peace-loving or is that warmongering? I mean, come on. Oh, that's peace-loving. You know that's what people are going to say because they want to say that. You know that's what patriotic Americans are going to say. They'll twist anything to believe what they want to believe. And almost every one of these wars has been an expansionist war for territory, resources, economics. Almost every single one. Economic expansion is a modern way of doing it. And only a few wars can be considered defensive wars. World War II, War on Terror, Barbary Wars, Shea Whiskey Rebellion, Civil War, right? Just a handful. The vast majority of wars have been expanding territory, controlling resources overseas. And I've shown you in great detail how the USA starts its wars in tricky, clever ways. I've taught this so many times. I know people don't retain anything. Iraq Invasion War, Vietnam War, Pearl Harbor attack, World War I, Spanish-American War, Indian Wars, Mexican-American War, War of 1812, and the gullible American masses will fall for the same tricks over and over and over forever because they don't retain a single thing I've taught. They'll fall for it forever. They will not learn. Congressmen will not learn. They'll fall for the same crap forever. History will repeat itself. Now, I believe war is necessary when confronted with evil. Right? World War II is a chief example of that. But I also believe war is the greatest evil when it is initiated for profit, wealth, money. You know, money is the root of all evil. Love of money. Because it involves mass killing. And the acquisition of more resources, money, and wealth have been the motive for the vast majority of U.S. wars. Right? That's God's honest truth. Nearly all of them. Although this will be denied by self-serving, egocentric Americans who gift-wrap our wars inside the flag of patriotism, which is nothing more than a feel-good, ego-stroking emotion. All right? Now, I honestly hate patriotic people and patriotism because it too often betrays what is really important. And that's our values and principles, which are the things that make us good and great as a nation. Not patriotism. That makes me sick. We got to stick to our values. But people put pride and patriotism before that. Because they put self before that. And that's human nature. So again, money will be made off this war. And I've gone through an example of the evolution of how money and wealth and power is made from war. Right? It's changed over time. Right? Okay, hopefully that helped teach you something. Hopefully you retain something.